I'm going to be recording my first book haul. So I have, I believe it's about 26 books here. So I've got, what's that, 5, 10, 15, let's see here, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 books that I have gotten since the beginning of the year. I'm not a huge book buyer right now. I've been using the library a lot because I can't really afford to buy a whole bunch of books right now. I'm making a huge list and I'm hoping to be able to find some. But this book haul is largely books that were gifted to me or also books that I found at a used book sale. So I will just start going through them and tell you what I've got. So the first one is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Oyama. And you guys have probably heard me talk about this book a lot because I love this book. I got it in January and I read it right away and I gave it 5 stars. It was my first 5-star of the year. And it is just such a good book. So this one is about a small library in Tokyo. The librarian, her name is Sayuri Komachi. She is the reference librarian. And this is a small community. It's a community hall that has a library in it, and that's where she works. And the story is about different people. There's from different points in their life, and they're all something ends up bringing them to this small library, and they ask her for recommendations for a book. It's not always like each one of them has something different they're wanting to learn. Like the one lady is trying to take some computer classes, and the old retired man is trying to learn a new card game. Those kind of things is what they're looking for. But they go and talk to the reference librarian. She prints them out a sheet of books, and there's always on the end of the list is always one book that has nothing to do with what they requested. But they end up looking at the book and taking it out, and somehow it leads them to learn something about themselves and to help them move on with things that are going on in their lives. And it's such an encouraging book. I really, really would love to meet this librarian, even though I know she's not real. But she is such a cool librarian, and I found it a really feel-good book and also a really encouraging book for where I'm at in my life. I can tell I'm just definitely going to read this one a lot of times. Whenever I'm feeling down and like I am not making any progress, I really want to read this one because it did really encourage me. So that's the first one. Then I picked up at a used book sale 2 books by Brian Jacques. These ones are part of his Redwall, his Tales of Redwall series. This one, Martin the Warrior, is number 6 and Loam Hedge is number 16. So they're not, in order of in any way. But I had found this one, and of course, you know me, I love books where animals are the main characters. And so I found this one, and then when I was going through the rest of the books, I came across this one, which I then realized was from the same series. So this one here is about a young mouse called Martin, and there is a stoat called Bedrang, and he is dreaming of his own land and his own empire, and he wants to have supreme power, but little Martin the mouse refuses to bow to him and his power and goes to fight for his freedom. So Martin the Warrior, that one's about that. And then this one here, Loam Hedge. This one is quite a bit further in the series, and I believe it has to do with it's a different character. It's not Martin from this one, but it's in the same world. I haven't really looked into this one because I don't want to give myself a bunch of spoilers for later in the series. So, but I did get those 2 from Brian Jacques. I've never actually read anything of his before. If you have, let me know what you think of it. I am looking forward to trying that because I'm always up for something new with animals as the main character in the vein of Watership Down, which is my favorite book. So then I actually I managed to find 3 Robin Hobb books. So I found Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest. This is books 2 and 3 in the Farseer trilogy, which is the first trilogy in her world. And these ones are about Fitz, who is a royal bastard, and he gets he grows up on the streets, and apparently he has some, his magic is a link with the animals, which I think will be really cool. But then he ends up getting pulled back into the palace and ends up training to become an assassin. And that's all I really know about it. I don't want to look too deeply into it. I know it's a very beloved series, so I'm looking forward to trying that. I will need to get the first book yet. And I haven't, like I've said before, I haven't read a lot of fantasy, but I've heard that these ones are really good. And then in the same sale, I happened to find Golden Fool, which is the second book in the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the third trilogy, I believe, in that world. So I have no idea what this one's about. I don't really want to look it up again because I don't want to spoil myself on anything. But it's the third trilogy in that whole world. And so I grabbed it because I have a feeling I'll probably collect the whole thing. So that's those ones. Then I happened to find as well this one here, which is Cat Bearing Gifts by Shirley Rousseau Murphy. This is number 18 in the Jo Gray Cat Mystery series that I've been rereading. I had never owned this one. I don't really want to look up too much on it because I haven't ever gotten this far in the series. But it looks like it's kind of a Christmas, it looks like it's a Christmas mystery in the Jo Gray series, but it's number 18 and I'm only on number 5, I think now. I've read the first 3 books in that series multiple times because those were the first ones that I discovered back in when I was a teenager. And then I kind of petered out on the series at about 7 or 8 like I usually do. So I've never actually gotten this far in the series, but I want to actually try reading the whole series and see if I like it or if I just like the first 3. So that's that one. So I picked that one up. And then I got this one given to me. This is Secrets of the Fearless by Elizabeth Laird. This one is actually a kid's book, but it's also set during the Age of Sail. And I love books set during the Age of Sail. I have a whole series of ones by a guy named Dudley Pope. They're about a man named Nicholas Ramage, and he is a captain of ships. I've read the Horatio Hornblower series by, is that C.S. Forrester, I think, wrote those ones. And those are kind of like the premier ones that everything else is compared to Hornblower. And I have a few other ones hanging around that I have read or want to read. And I also really want to read the Bernard Cornwell Sharp series, which is set during that same time period. And then there's also the Master and Commander series by, who wrote those ones? Let me just look here. By Patrick O'Brien. I think I have the first couple in that one. So anyways, I really love the Age of Sail. And this is set during that period. This is about a 12-year-old boy named John Barr. And he gets pressed into the Navy, which happened quite often back then to young men. And he ends up becoming a soldier on the HMS Fearless. And he ends up getting involved in naval espionage. So that sounds really cool. That's right up my alley for the sorts of books that I really like reading. So I got that one. I also found this one here, The Bookwoman's Last Fling by John Dunning. This is part of his Cliff Janeway series. This is the 5th and final one in the series. I have the other ones, but I haven't actually read them yet. But they're about a bookman living in Denver. His name is Cliff Janeway, and he ends up solving mysteries is basically what happens. And this one has to do with a woman named Candace Geiger, and she passed away, and her elderly husband has a collection. Her elderly husband passes away, and he has a collection of books, and Janeway goes to assess his collection and value the books. But he finds that there are some books that have been replaced by cheap reprints that were actually worth a lot of money, and that starts the mystery. Like I say, I haven't read the other ones in the series yet, but I do own them. So I was excited to find this one because I think this was the only one I don't have. I might not have the 4th one either, but I for sure have the first 3 in that series. Then I found this gigantic tome. This is Pierre Berton's book, The Arctic Grail, The Quest for the Northwest Passage and the North Pole, 1818 to 1909. Pierre Berton is a Canadian, or he was a Canadian legend author. He wrote nonfiction about Canada. His book, Klondike, is one of my favorites. And he also has one called The Great Depression that I read and really found useful for my own writing. I have quite a few of his books. He has ones on the War of 1812. He has one on Vimy Ridge. What else does he have? He has one on the settling of the prairies. He has 2 books in a series to do with the building of the railroad in Canada. But his writing is so good. It's not like, I read a lot of history books, as you may have noticed. I love history. I read a lot of history books, but I find that a lot of them are really dry. And when I first picked up Pierre Berton's books, the Klondike one was the first one I ever picked up, I fell in love with his writing. His description of the Yukon River in the beginning of the Klondike book is so good. It's actually one of my favorite passages of writing ever. It's Pierre Berton's description of the Yukon River in the beginning of Klondike and W.O. Mitchell's description of the prairie in the beginning of Who Has Seen the Wind are 2 of my all-time favorite pieces of writing. So I really fell in love with his writing. I have a few of his books, but I didn't have this one yet. So I was really excited to find it because they're quite expensive to get because they're so large. And I'm really looking forward to reading it. The way he writes, he tells the story, like he's a really good storyteller. And instead of writing it in a clinical textbook sort of manner, he writes it in a storytelling manner. And I think that's what I love about it so much, because you feel like you're almost more like you're reading a novel, although, it's obviously, actual history and very, very well researched. And, he doesn't put words in people's mouths or anything, but it feels like you're reading a story versus reading a history book. And that's what I really love about his books. So super excited to find that one used. Then I have a stack of 6 books over here. And this is ones that I got from my mom because she's read them and wasn't going to keep reading them again, or she's not a rereader, so she wasn't going to reread them. So she gave them to me, and that is Lee Child's Jack Reacher series. So what she gave me is book 1. This is book 3, book 4, and then we have book 5, book 12, and book 22. So I have a lot more to collect in it if I'm going to read them all. But it's one that I've been wanting to try because I've heard really good things about the character. I've heard that he's a very cool character. He's fierce and always figures out what's going on and fights for the little person. So that's why I want to read these. So these ones are about Jack Reacher, and he is an ex-military policeman and a drifter. He just drifts around the United States and ends up getting sucked into these situations. And I know some of the later books do go back in time to when he was a military policeman as well. This one here, this is the first one, and he is passing through Margrave, Georgia. And while he's passing through, he ends up getting arrested for murder. And it goes from there. I have glanced at the early parts of this book, and I know that it has to do with that the town itself is very strange and appears to be sort of bought by whatever's going on, whoever is doing this. And it looked really good. So I'm excited to read that one as well and start that series at some point. Then I got all 3 of these Jane Harper ones. So I've got The Dry, Force of Nature, and Exiles. And these 3 are the trilogy that she wrote about Aaron Falk. I've read the first 2 and I gave them both 5 stars. I absolutely love this character. Aaron is such a good character, and he's my newest fictional crush. I really love him. So the first one takes place, Aaron is actually a federal agent working for the government in Melbourne. And he works on financial crimes. But in the first book, he gets called back to the small town that he grew up in because his best friend growing up, whose name was Luke, appears to have murdered his wife and son and then killed himself. And Aaron isn't going to go back because he has a bad history with the town from when he was growing up. There's events that happened that caused him and his father to leave the town. But Luke's father essentially blackmails him into coming back for the funeral and then talks him into looking into things to try and find out what happened, because he does not believe that Luke would have done that, would have murdered his wife and son. So you get Aaron starting to try and figure out what's going on and solve what's happening. But you also get the story in this one of what happened when he was a young man, when he was a teenager. With him, there was Aaron, Luke, and these two girls who were really, really good friends. And you find out early on that one of the girls ended up dying. Hi, Pippi. And all of the stuff that went on in his past has to do with that. So the story is told with 3 timelines. You're getting the timeline of what happened when they were teenagers, the timeline of what happened before Luke's death, and the timeline of the current timeline when Aaron is there in the small town. Oh, this takes place in Australia. I don't know if I mentioned that. And so the setting is really good. I really enjoy her setting. She's creates a very visual setting through her words. I really enjoy that as well. And it was such a good book. I was not successful at picking out what had happened, but I am definitely, this is going to be a reread series. And Jane Harper, after reading these first 2 books, is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I'm really looking forward to getting the rest of her books. I want to read everything she's written because I just love her style. This is, again, Force of Nature, which was the second one. I read this one for Summerween, and I'll put a link to that up in the corner. This one takes place later in the same year. It involves a group of people who are on a corporate retreat, and they are in the mountains hiking. And 5 of the women go in, they get lost, and only 4 come back, and one of them is missing. And it just happens that the person who is missing is the key witness in a case that Aaron and his partner are working on to do with corporate espionage and I believe money laundering and those sorts of crimes. So they get involved because the woman who has gone missing is this whistleblower, and the people who run the company were also on this corporate retreat. So that's how he gets involved. And again, the setting is really good. She creates such a visual setting. I just love her writing so much. And the characters are really good again. And this one has 2 timelines. So you're following Aaron and his partner in present timeline, and then you're also seeing scenes from different people's point of view of what happened out on the mountain before the woman went missing. So you're getting those 2 timelines, and I just love that style that she writes. And then this is the third one. It's called Exiles, and this one I haven't read yet. It looks like it has to do with a festival and a mother who vanished, leaving her baby alone. Yeah, it looks like Aaron gets involved because it's a year later, and he knows the family and is involved in a celebration a year later for a welcome to a new addition to the family. And then he starts looking into what happened to the woman who went missing. So that looks like it's really cool. This is just a trilogy. So that's all 3 there that she wrote about that character, which I'm sad about because I love him so much, but I'm definitely going to reread this series over and over again. And I want to read this one before the end of the year for sure. Then I ended up getting 2 Kate Morton books. I don't have the other one with me here because my sister's reading it right now. But I got The Lake House and The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. And I've never read anything of hers before, but I've heard that they're really good. This one takes place, it's again a book with 2 timelines, and I'm finding I really enjoy that when there's a past timeline and a present timeline. And this one of the timelines is in 1933, and it's this family and their 11-month-old son vanishes from his crib. And after the investigation, no trace is found, and that destroys their family. And then it takes place again, also 70 years later, where their daughter Alice, who has become a famous author of mystery novels, and she has her own ideas of what happened that summer. But then a young detective comes along and wants to open the cold case, and so she ends up getting involved. So that's all I know about it, but I've heard it's really good, and I really am looking forward to that one. And then the other one is called The Forgotten Garden, and it's another sort of mystery. But I love that dual timeline sort of story. I really fell in love with it with Jane Harper, so I'm really looking forward to trying that. And of course, I love history, and I love anything that takes place in the 1930s. I don't know why that period fascinates me so much, but it does. And the last one I've got is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This one I also read for Summerween, which again, I'll put a link to the vlog. And I ended up giving this one 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The characters were really good, especially Ernie Cunningham, who's the main character. He was so good. And it's a very fun book. It was more serious than I expected, though. I was expecting just a lot of humor, but it was humorous, but it was also quite serious in some aspects, which was cool. So this one takes place on a mountain resort. Ernie's family has gotten together for essentially a family reunion because his older brother is getting out of prison. And there's a lot of tension because Ernie happens to be the one whose testimony put his older brother into prison for murder. But they all get together. It's Ernie's mother, stepfather, stepsister, the ex-wife of his brother, Ernie's ex-wife, and his brother, who all end up in this place at the same time. And throughout the story, you're learning about his family and how everyone in his family has killed someone in one way or another, and how it plays into this story where they're trying to figure out what's going on, because the very first night that they're there, a body is discovered on the ski hill, frozen, and it's obvious that it's been a murder. And there's suspicion that it could be a serial killer because it's the MO of a serial killer from previous. Or it could be a copycat, or it could be anything. So we don't know. And so Ernie ends up setting out with his sister, or his stepsister, and his ex-wife to try and figure out what's going on, and try and figure out, because he thinks that somebody in his family is involved in it. So it was really good. I really, really enjoyed the writing. He's writing to you. He breaks the fourth wall quite often, which is really fun in this style of a book. And I highly recommend it. I did give it 4.5 stars, and I'm looking forward to checking out his second one, which is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, I believe. So I need to get that one so that I can read it. I really enjoyed that one, and I will let you guys know what I think of those once I get a chance to read the rest of them. Like I say, a few of them I have read because this is, my book haul for the first half of the year. So I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know if you've read any of these and what you think of them, and especially the ones that I haven't read yet, or the series that I haven't started yet. Let me know what you thought of those series, and I will see you guys soon on my next video. Bye!